We'll get started in just a minute or so. My name is Josh Walker. I'm the president of the American Fork Chamber, and I'm going to unmute Spencer here. Spencer is going to be our main presenter today. Let's unmute you. There. And so obviously it's a crazy time we're all living in right now, but I would like to invite everyone to put in the chat room, just tell us the business that you're with. And you don't have to have your camera on. You're welcome to just keep that quiet. And we will open things up at the end for questions. And so welcome, Mike. He's with Bronze Sculpture. We actually, is that the foundry in Alpine? Or is that in Lehigh? I can't remember. And Peter, thanks for coming on the call. There's Spencer. Megan with Colliers International, thanks for hopping on. Looks like Springville. There's Dan with Ampian. So Dan, thanks for joining us. Dan will be helping to fill in some questions as well toward the end. City Cakes and Cafe. Oh, it's lunchtime. That's making me hungry. So Catherine, thanks for joining us from Vineyard. Jennifer from Power Innovations. Carmen, thanks, with the Hyatt Hotel. We've got Acadian Counseling. David Pack with Pack Chiropractic. He said, we've got Gregory, says can't hear and the phone system is not working. So is anyone having issues with, Spencer, can you hear me just fine?
I can hear you great, Josh.
Okay. Christina's on the phone now. Thanks, Christina. I'm going to unmute you.
Okay.
So Christina she leads the chamber with me. She is the vice president of the chamber. So thanks for being on the call with us. And I think it's time to get started. So as people hop on, we'll just keep going. But we started this leadership call series to help our businesses connect with each other, but also to get important resources out to the community. So on Monday, we had our first call. It was with Len Williams, the president of Alta Bank, and they talked about all of the new financial tools available, both on a federal and a state and a local level. So the banks are all working together to create some deferment packages where businesses can defer mortgages or rent. They also have created, or they talked about the SBA program. We're going to have Val Hale on the call on Monday to talk specifically about the state incentives that they're going to be putting in place for businesses. And so we're looking forward to that call. In the meantime, I'm going to turn the call over to Christina. We've created some resources, and I'm going to hop on my computer to show those to you. And so, Christina, as I do that, you want to kind of hop in and talk about some of the things we've done?
Yep. So the first place we want to direct you to is our website, our homepage. Right at the very top, underneath our name, we've put a big graphic that says coronavirus employer information. So if you click on that, it will take you to another page. And that page is full of resources for businesses. So the first few are the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Small Business Administration. So I know, based on our call that we had on Monday, a lot of people are interested in that. So if you go to our website and click on that page, we have a link that will take you directly to them. And then the Business Resource Center at UVU, the Small Business Development Center, they have a ton of resources for businesses and custom fit. They have some trainings that people can do. So one of the things that we're encouraging businesses to do is to keep getting training, keep working on your business, keep improving your skills. Even if your business isn't open, make sure that you're still learning things that will help you adapt to kind of the new way of doing things. So underneath that, we have some health information. So to the CDC, utah.gov, Utah County Health Department, and then DOMO, which is a local American Fork company. They have a really comprehensive coronavirus tracker. So it's actually pretty cool. A lot of people in my family get on that a couple times a day because it's got a ton of information. It updates, I think, every 10 minutes. So you can actually track the virus there. And then underneath that, we are updating and trying to keep updated all of our events that we've had to postpone and reschedule. So we've pushed everything out to at least May, but that's where you can get the latest information on that. And then if you go back up to the top and you see the coronavirus, and then a couple of things drop down. The first one, strategies to help your business. So again, it's just a whole bunch of resources for things that you can do to work on your business, even if you can't work in your business right now, even if you're closed. You can learn some new skills. You can learn some more about marketing. You can learn how to use some new things like Zoom. Josh and I didn't even know what Zoom was 3 days ago, and now we're getting to be experts at it. And that's, I think, what's going to help people the most is you have to adapt. And that's one thing that, you know, the governor is saying, you got to adapt, you got to innovate, and you got to overcome. So in order for us to survive economically, we have to get creative. We have to get out of our comfort zone. We have to learn some new ways to do things. And then the other drop down is supporting the business community. So it's ways that people can support the business community. Shop local. And we started a Facebook page. It's called Shop Local, Support Local for our chamber area. And any business can post in there. If you have specials, if you're open, if you're closed, if you're offering deals, anything that, and residents can post in there if they see those things as well. So that's just where kind of a place where everybody can meet and share information about the local businesses. So it talks about ordering takeout or delivery. That's another page that we've created. That one's for all of North Utah County. So that's a Facebook group. Anyone can join. It's got about 1,500 people in it right now, and it's pretty active. A lot of people posting updates about what restaurants are offering takeout, curbside, delivery, and how important it is to support those businesses. You know, those businesses, a lot of them were not set up to do takeout or delivery or drive-through, and they had to learn and implement a new way to do their business in like 2 days. So it's important that we help all of those businesses. Then some other things just about collaborate with your peers, buy gift cards, donate, all the different ways that we can still support the business community, even if we can't go to those businesses. So those are just some of the things that are on the website. And again, you know, the Facebook groups, we'd love for everybody to join those as well.
Cool, thanks, Christina. So I think we're gonna just hop right into having Spencer. Spencer, I'm just gonna let you introduce yourself, kind of tell us a little bit of your background, and then dive right into all the employment stuff.
Okay, sounds like a plan. I'm happy to do that. One thing I'd just like to mention is I think we do have the chat feature here. Let's see. Yeah, we've got the chat open. So if there are questions, I think everyone is back to being muted again. If you have questions, type them over on the right-hand side, and I will do the best I can to go through them and make sure we answer as many as possible. First of all, thank you, Josh and Christina, for giving me an invitation to participate here. I have been spending a lot of time the last week helping business owners all across Utah understand what this new COVID-19 law means. It was passed last week, Wednesday evening, and so we're just barely 7 days into this. I'm going to maybe take 5 or 10 minutes to touch on some of the basics of this new law, what it says, who it applies to, and then I want to spend the bulk of our time together answering questions that you guys have as business owners. And so, sorry, Josh. Josh asked me to do an intro. I already forgot. So I'm a local attorney. I work out of a home office in American Fork and a virtual office at the point of the mountain. And I do HR employment law, meaning I help business owners stay out of trouble with their employees. That's my focus. Okay. So Wednesday night, President Trump signed this new law called everything that is legal in nature has an acronym that goes with it. Mm-hmm. The acronym that you might start seeing everywhere is the FFCRA, which stands for the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. Okay. This is a significant change to employment law that applies to small business owners in Utah and everywhere else across the United States. There are 2 parts of this law, and so starting kind of high level, and then we'll work our way down to some of the specifics, and then we'll get to the questions. The 2 parts of this law are first an Emergency Family Medical Relief Act, or an extension or change of what used to be their FMLA leave. The second act is the Emergency Paid Sick Leave. So those are the 2 new parts that are requiring business owners to pay certain benefits to their employees that we're going to discuss. So the first one, the Emergency Family Medical Leave Act, or Emergency FMLA, what this basically says is that employees are eligible for 2 weeks of unpaid leave and then 10 weeks of paid leave at 2/3 of their regular rate of pay. Now, you might remember, any of you who are businesses that have less than 50 employees, you've never had to follow the FMLA in the past because it only applies to businesses with 50 or more employees within a 75-mile radius. So any business that's got less than 50 never had to really worry about FMLA. That's one of the things that changed with this new law. The new emergency FMLA applies to every business in the United States with less than 500 employees. My guess is that probably means just about everybody on this call who is a business owner now has to worry about what does this new emergency FMLA mean for you and your business, because you are now a covered employer that's required to understand and follow the law. So the primary purpose of this emergency FMLA, again, is the 2 weeks of unpaid leave and 10 weeks of paid leave at 2/3 of their regular rate of pay. So when do employees get this benefit? The good news is it's rather narrow. The only time employees are eligible for this benefit is if they are staying home, and meaning that they cannot work either in person or remotely, and they're staying home because they are taking care of kids who are either out of school due to the coronavirus, or they are unable to get child care for their children. So right now we know at least through May 1st, kids all across Utah are out of school. And so any business owner who's got an employee that can't work remotely or in person, and the reason is because that employee has to take care of kids at home, that would be a situation where the emergency FMLA kicks in, the 2 weeks of unpaid leave, and then after that's over, 10 weeks of paid leave at 2/3 of their regular rate of pay. Now, one of the questions I've been getting a lot about this and the paid sick leave is, why on earth does this new law only apply to businesses with fewer than 500 employees? It sounds like, and it feels like, the government has said, hey, smaller businesses, we're going to require you guys to pay a ton of money to your employees, and we're going to let the big businesses off the hook. That's what it sounds like. But the good news is that the government, the federal government, is in essence going to be paying every one of these dollars to your employees. And the way that they intend that to work is, just as an example, let's say you've got an employee who's eligible for emergency FMLA. They can't work in person, they can't work remotely, and they're staying home to take care of kids who are out of school. So that person gets up to 10 weeks of FMLA leave, and they're being paid dollars out of your pocket as a business owner. So the government said, you know, you're going to front the money right now, but then as soon as your business would be due to pay payroll taxes to the federal government, you can deduct dollar for dollar the benefits that you pay to your employees. So if you pay $5,000 in emergency FMLA benefits to your employees, and then you've got payroll taxes due to the federal government for $7,000, all you have to do is deduct $5,000 right off the top and just pay your $2,000 to the government. And they even said in their guidance that they issued yesterday that if the amount that you pay your employees is more than the payroll taxes you pay to the government, the federal government, you can withhold all of your taxes and then ask them to reimburse you for the extra amount of money to help cover every dollar that you pay to your employees. So in a way, they are asking business owners they are asking us to front the money. Now, we're the ones who've got to take money and pay to the employees who fall into these categories, but then we're able to turn around and they're going to match what we paid dollar for dollar, so that at the end of the day, hopefully things come out as a wash and that the federal government has covered every dollar that we've had to pay to the employees. Okay, that's the first one. That's the first part, FMLA, or emergency FMLA. The second part of this new law, and again, this is a just about 50-page single-space law. So I am trying to simplify this as best as we can, but there's a lot in here. But the emergency paid sick leave is a little bit different than the FMLA. The emergency paid sick leave says that employees can get 2 weeks of pay at their full 100% regular rate of pay, whatever they normally earn on a daily basis for doing their job. That's what they can get for 2 weeks as paid sick leave. Now, the eligibility or the rules for when an employee can get paid sick leave are a little bit different than the FMLA. There are actually 5 different categories There are 6. One of them they haven't issued any guidance on. So to simplify, there are really 5 categories we want to pay attention to. That if an employee cannot work remotely or in person, then they get paid sick leave if the first one is that they are ordered by a state government to quarantine, or federal government or local authority. The second one is if they are recommended by a medical authority to self-quarantine. And the third one is that they are carrying, or that they are exhibiting symptoms themselves of somebody who's got the COVID-19 virus. The fourth one, if they're caring for somebody who's been diagnosed with the virus. And the fifth one is if they're taking care of kids. So there's 5 real primary reasons that if a person cannot work for your business, they call you or they come in and they say, I've got to stay home. I can't work because the government told me to stay home, or I'm sick, or I'm caring for somebody who's sick with the virus. They are the people who are eligible for 2 weeks of paid leave at their full rate of pay. Now, one little thing that is going to get clarified. Well, actually, there's a lot of things that the Department of Labor, which is the agency that's enforcing this new law, that they're trying to clarify this week. And every day they're issuing new guidance and new posters and new things that employers can use to help them understand this law. But it's really confusing. So a couple of things that I think are going to help hopefully ease tension just a little bit is first that this new law doesn't kick in until April 1st. Okay, so we have a few more days to figure out what it means for you and your businesses. Second is that the DOL has just said they are not going to enforce it strictly for the first 30 days. So for the entire month of April, as long as your business is making efforts to understand and implement the rules of this new law, there shouldn't be any legal liability if you screw up and you don't get things right. So essentially, we've got a 30-day grace period, okay? Third is the Department of Labor yesterday morning issued a poster that has some guidance for employees to help them understand what their rights are under this new law. And this is a poster that's required to be hung up in any workplace if the employees are still coming into work, or if employees have been furloughed, then they can receive the poster by email. So that's available on the Department of Labor website. I've got a copy as well. If anyone doesn't know where to find it, you can shoot me an email. I'm happy to send it out to anyone. Okay, that is like, I don't know, maybe a 10-minute or so high-level summary of the emergency FMLA and the emergency paid sick leave. So I'm going to take just a minute and look through to see if we've got any questions here. Kelly, I think I see your question at the first one. Has the burden of paying for time off and forced rehiring been lifted from small business owners? So the way I would answer that is, yeah, it really has. I mean, business owners are still having to front that money, and actually it's coming out of their pocket when it goes to the employee. But within hopefully a very short amount of time, employers are going to be able to recover every one of those dollars by not having to pay taxes on, or taking that basically right out of their tax bill. Okay, now Kelly's making a little sign there. Are you able to unmute Kelly if he's got a question there? No question, Kelly? I'm seeing the number 2.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. I was just saying I have a follow-up question there below.
Oh, okay. So sorry about that. Okay, I thought you just showed me the piece.
Hard to say too. Yeah, peace on, brother. But yeah.
Okay. Let's see. In a second, what if the business closes or goes bankrupt before then? That's a great question. So the Department of Labor, as of at least this morning, has not given any answer to this question, which a lot of people are asking me. My best understanding, and again, I'm very grateful we've got a 30-day grace period to figure out exactly how this law is going to work. But if a business has to close, whether it's temporarily or permanently, I don't think there's going to be any liability under this new law, okay? Business owners are often asking me, well, what if I have to let some of my staff go? And it's not because they're sick. It's not because they've been ordered by a doctor to self-quarantine. It's because I simply don't have enough revenue coming into my business. We don't have enough customers, enough clients. And my answer to all of them has been, you still have to run your business. If there's not enough revenue or enough dollars coming into your business to support your staff, and you have to make cuts, that's absolutely legitimate. There's no liability to a business under this new COVID-19 law for laying off or reducing hours or furloughing employees because of the business slowdown. Okay, great question. Okay, let's go to the next one here. Dan Schertz. Is it only a payroll tax credit unless what you apply to the taxes exceed what the taxes are available? Then you need to apply to the IRS. So I'll give a quick disclaimer here that I'm not a tax attorney. I'm an employment law attorney. But my understanding is, yeah, this is a credit against payroll taxes. And if the dollars that you pay to your employees is more than what you would normally pay in your payroll taxes, then you keep all of those taxes. You don't pay anything to the government for payroll taxes. And then you can submit to them a request for reimbursement for any other dollars that you've already paid out. And the DOL says, and they're working with the IRS on this, that the payment or the reimbursement will be made as fast as possible. Now, we all know sometimes the federal government can be slow. They've got a lot of things they're trying to do. Sometimes the repayment may not come as fast as we'd like it to, but they have said over and over again that this is a dollar for dollar match. Every dollar that business owners pay to their people for benefits under this new law is going to be recoupable by the business owners. Okay, let's see, we got a question from Carlos. What if so many employees leave that I'm not able to operate my business? Is everybody then covered? No. So if employees are leaving because they are covered under this new law, then sure, there's an obligation to pay benefits to them. But if it gets to the point where the business slows down or has to shutter itself temporarily or maybe even long term, that my understanding would be that would eliminate the requirement to continue paying any benefits to the employees if your business is actually closed. Now, that's not coming from the DOL, that's just my reading of the law, and we may get some clarification from them this week. But essentially, businesses, in my perspective, are able to slow down or even stop operations because there are no customers and clients coming in. And if that's the case, there's no obligation to pay the employees any of these benefits. And to tack onto that, just one other thing that is a question that has come up again and again is, these benefits and this new law only applies to people who cannot work. So if you are set up as a business where you can have your employees working remotely, they don't get any of these benefits. There's no obligation to pay them anything under this new law if they can work remotely. None of these benefits apply unless the employee cannot work in person and cannot work remotely. Okay, Hyatt Place.
So actually, Spencer,
Yeah,
there's a
go ahead,
question
sure.
further up from David and Darla Pack. What about employers who don't have the ability to pay the employees up front?
Yeah, so if there's no money, if there's essentially no money to pay employees up front and you're, that's a tough question. The reason is that I think the law is still going to apply if you're in business, but you just don't have the funds to pay them. Failing to pay them would be a violation of this new law, which is essentially a violation of the federal, what's called the Fair Labor Standards Act. And it could bring additional liability to the business. So if the business is close to or in a place where there is no money to pay employees, I guess I don't want to suggest that you just close temporarily, but that might be an option. But I don't think that there isn't in the law that, as it's written right now, that excuses business if they just don't have money. There is, it's the PACs, is that right? That you said that question was from Dave Pack? Okay, so there is language in there, and this may be helpful for you or anyone else that's in a similar situation. There is language that small businesses, if this new obligation would put their business at risk, can apply for an exemption from the law. So, I mean, that's exactly what I would hope to see. The problem is they haven't said how you apply for that exemption. There's no place to do it, and there's no rules about who's going to be able to qualify for the exemption or what we have to be able to show to qualify for the exemption. So the law does have at least a nod or a recognition that there are some businesses in that situation where they just simply cannot pay these benefits. And it says that there will be an option to request an exemption, but we don't have any idea what that's really going to look like right now. So I would guess that before the law actually kicks in on April 1st, we'll probably get some really clear guidance about that. Most of the time when the DOL does these kinds of exemptions, the chances are it's going to apply to businesses based on their size, not necessarily the money in the bank account or how difficult it would be for them to pay employees. And I think they're probably going to put that at 25 employees. So we just got to keep an eye out on the guidance that the DOL issues this week. I would expect something along the lines of if you have 25 or fewer employees and that you're able to certify, like under oath or something, that these benefits are going to put our business at risk, that you would be exempted from the payment requirements. But that's just my guess. I don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately, but I think we're going to get that answer before the week is over. Okay. So I think I might be missing some of these questions. They're coming pretty quickly. Josh, you want to just tell me the next one you want to answer?
So we'll go to Carmen's question from the Hyatt Place in Provo. For reduction of salary wages, are there any legalities when it comes to expectations on time that is worked from employer, of employee, or employee to employer? I think employer to employee or employee to employee.
Okay, so I think I understand the question here. So whenever a business needs to reduce wages or reduce salaries, that is not an issue that's covered directly by this new law. So if you're going to keep a certain number of staff, but in order to stay open, you need to reduce wages, whether it's an hourly wage or salary, that should be fine. There's really no obligation to keep an employee at whatever rates they're earning right now, unless there's a contract promise with that employee. And most employees in the state of Utah are at-will employees, and the terms of their employment are also at-will, meaning if you need to reduce somebody from $12 an hour down to $10 an hour just so you can keep a few more people on the job, that's totally fine. What you cannot do, and this is addressed in the law, is you can't take any kind of adverse action against somebody who has asked for benefits under this new law. So if you've got an employee who says, you know, I need to stay home because the doctors told me I've got some symptoms and it's dangerous for me to be out, you cannot use that as a grounds for reducing somebody's hourly wage while they're entitled to the full wage. So
Great. And I've actually unmuted Dan Schertz with Ampian HR. Dan, if you would want to add any comments to any of these questions, you're welcome.
yes, please, Dan. Thank you.
No, yeah, look, the information that's being disseminated is coming out so quickly that I'm surprised if Spencer's gotten more than a few hours sleep in the last week or so.
Thank you for
he looks great. So obviously, you know, what we're talking about is the law that has been passed and has been signed. Most of you are aware that the House of Representatives has taken up the Senate bill. And they're in their 24-hour mandatory period right now to kind of scrub that bill. The soonest they could vote on that would be, I believe, 11 p.m. tonight. But I believe there's a vote scheduled on the House on the floor for 9 a.m. tomorrow, Spencer. If you have any clarification on that. But that additional stimulus package is one of the largest, if not the largest, stimulus packages historically to help bolster the economy and help bolster small business. And we can talk about how this law and that law, at least some of the points that we believe are going to be in that law, intertwine. But before we get into that, maybe Spencer, do you have any comment on that?
No, I think you're right. I know it's things are moving at breakneck speed, and not only with new laws, but then we're getting guidance about what do these laws actually mean. And it is pretty tricky to follow. I think the DOL is doing the best they can, the IRS as well, to try and give some guidance and some structure to these new laws so that business owners know what they're supposed to do. But it is changing hour by hour, day by day for sure.
So some of the things that I would just add to clarify maybe some of the things that Spencer said, what we're working on with most of our clients are how to use the laws in tactical ways, boots on the ground, so to speak. If I could maybe just augment some of the things that Spencer has said, he talked about the different needs wherein these laws, the paid sick leave, go into effect. Now, again, mirroring what he said, most businesses recognize that in old FMLA would protect employees' jobs if they needed to take leave, but the employer had no obligation to pay for the time that they took off, but they wouldn't be there wouldn't be retribution for taking the time off, and that's old FMLA. New FMLA says that the employer now has to pay for them, but to clarify a little bit more on the granular level, I want to read actually what each one of these are. The reasons for qualifying for the leave, there are 6 of them, and it's important to understand what each of them are. The first one is you're subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order related to COVID-19. That is number 1. Number 2, you have been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine related to COVID-19. And number 3 is you are experiencing COVID-19 symptoms and are seeking medical diagnosis. The reason why I outlined those 3 is because those first 3 all pertain to you. Okay, the remaining 3, number 4 is you're caring for an individual subject to an order described in 1, or self-quarantine is described in 2. Number 5 is the one that we'll focus on later, but number 5 is you are caring for his or her child whose school or place of care is closed due to COVID-19 related reasons. That's going to be a big one. That's why we'll focus on that in just a minute. Number 6 is you're experiencing any other substantially similar condition specified by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So numbers 4, 5, and 6 are a them criteria. So the first 3 is you yourself are experiencing the symptoms. The remaining 3 are a them scenario. The reason why that's important is because the breakdown of the pay in the first 3 is the first 3, if the employee themselves cannot work remotely or is quarantined or is experiencing symptoms or seeking diagnosis, they can receive 100% of their pay, capped at $511 a day. And Spencer, correct me if I get any of this wrong.
No, you're right so far. There are some caps, and I appreciate you pointing these out. It's down into the deep details, but you're right.
Yeah, it's $511 per day for the first 2 weeks, which would be 10 working days. So there's a cap of $5,110 on that. The remaining 4, because it's a them scenario, is the rate of pay is basically 67% of their wage, because it's not you yourself, it's a care situation, and that's capped at $200 per day for the 10 days. Now, that is applicable, that guideline is on all 6 of those, but the expanded FMLA reach, which Spencer mentioned, is going to be on the issue, which is number 5, which affects probably most employers. Most employers here in the state of Utah are going to have some employee who falls underneath their child is at home because their school or care center has been closed. Now, underneath that expanded FMLA, there is an extra 10 weeks of care given for number 5 specifically at that rate of 67% of their wage, capped at $200 a day. So it's important to know that there is an expense to employers that through old FMLA, they did not need to cover, but under the new law, employers are going to be required to pay. Now, how can you spin this to a positive? Because what Spencer mentioned is it is a payroll tax credit. Let's talk about how that works a little bit more at the granular level. If you have a company whose payroll is $100,000 per payroll cycle, okay, and look, this joke would be more funny if you actually knew me, but though I look like I'm good at math because I'm Asian, I'm not really that great at math, so I'm going to round these percentages, right? So underneath your payroll, you have payroll taxes. I'm going to focus on FICA Soc and FICA Med. I know that FICA Soc is at 6.2 and that FICA Med is at 1.45, but for sake of this discussion, I'm going to round those to 6 and 1.5. So in other words, what happens is on a $100,000 payroll, your FICA Soc tax obligation would be $6,000, and your FICA Med would be $1,500. So just to make this really easy, let's take an individual who has to stay home because that individual's child is home sick is at home because their school has closed down, not necessarily because they themselves are sick. At $200 per day, if they met that cap in a 2-week time frame, there would be a $2,000 payroll obligation that the client company would have to meet. That client company, like Spencer said, has $6,000 in FICA Soc that they're going to be obligated to pay. They simply would pay $4,000, so there's an immediate reimbursement for that payroll that they're obligated to. If you have a $100,000 payroll, you probably have more than just 1 or 2 employees. So then you have to be cognizant of how many of those employees do you have before you've utilized all of your FICA Soc. So if you had 4 of those individuals at $2,000 a piece, you would now exceed your FICA Soc that you'd have as a bank, if you will, of $6,000 because you'd be at $8,000. The remaining 2, so you wouldn't have any FICA Soc obligation, and you would petition the IRS, who has said that they would have quick turnaround times of a couple weeks for a refund of that remaining $2,000 credit. Spencer, am I still
Yeah,
correct?
I think you're spot on there. I mean, I think it's really important for a lot of people to really kind of hear, like you said, the granular level, how this all works. So I appreciate
Right.
you taking some time to, give an
So,
example of how it does work. But I think it's also great to, to do the sort of the high level so we understand what does this really mean for our business. I think both of those perspectives are great.
Cool.
for sure. The reason why I want to bring down the granular level is because if the House were to pass the resolution in front of them today, and some of the more agreed upon aspects of that bill were to turn into law, I mean, they're working out some of the finer languages, but there is language in there that says that businesses are able to apply for loans through the SBA, and if they keep their employees through a specific period, that those loans would turn into grants. They would be forgiven. The reason why this is important is because if businesses are laying off mass amounts of employees at this point in time, they have disqualified themselves from being able to apply for that loan to be turned into a grant by way of forgiveness. Because you can't have a 30-man company lay off 25 employees and say, oh yeah, we're just a 5-man company, and maintain a staff of 5 employees to say, yeah, I didn't let anybody go. And so, yeah, I want my loan to be turned into a grant, when right before that law was passed, you laid off 25 employees. So what we're trying to counsel employers to do right now is to be cognizant of how these laws work together. If you're a 30-man company and you're like, how do I buy a little bit of time? Knowing that through the tax credits, there's relatively in quasi-real-time immediate relief for that payroll. If you need to let somebody go, choose the people who have kids at home. Take advantage of those tax credits that are given to you and lay off 4 or 5 of those people to reduce payroll expenses to buy a little bit of time to qualify. Now, Spencer may want to talk about this in a little bit more depth. The basic tenets of that law, it appears that there's going to be a period that if you have laid off employees, that you can quickly rehire them. They've basically indicated that they can make this look back to February 15th. I don't want to get into any specifics because that bill has not passed, nor would I believe Spencer would want to stake his claim on how that's going to be written. But what we're doing is we are actively advising clients right now on how to handle the subtleties between laying off and furloughing, and looking at who to lay off or who to furlough, and the subtleties between those. We, at Ampian HR, being that this is a chamber call, there may be some people that are members of the chamber that are clients of Ampian HR. The thing I would just like to plug is if you are a client of Ampian HR, if you would make sure that you're looking for notifications at Ampian HR. We are daily giving information to our clients on some of these subtleties. But right now, honestly, if you're not a client of Ampian HR, but you want to get into our daily drip campaign, I don't care if you're a client or not. Business leaders need to be made aware of these subtleties and some of these nuances of how it works, boots on the ground, and how to let people go, or who to let people go, or how to furlough, or who to furlough and why. If you want to shoot me an email with an email address that you would like to be added to this drip campaign, I'll add my email address to the comments, but it's Dan@AmpianHR. I don't care if you're a client or not. Businesses need to kind of rally around each other with this information right now.
And I think that's the right perspective, Dan, and that's what I've been telling a lot of business owners, at least since last Wednesday, is that whether they're a client of my office or not, and I think a lot of people are doing this, is give us a call. Let us know what your questions are. I've been taking lots and lots of calls about this new COVID-19 response bill or the law, and there's I'm not charging any legal fees. My office isn't charging any kind of expenses for people calling in and asking questions. This is one of the chances that we have as a law office, and like Dan was just saying with Ampian HR, that we want to reach out and make ourselves available to be a resource to each of you guys as business owners to understand what this law means and how to apply it for your business. So yeah, absolutely reach out to Dan, shoot me an email. I can put that in the comments as well. I'm more than happy to talk with anyone, send over a copy of the new poster that's mandatory, or just answer questions about this new law, and you won't have to worry about seeing any kind of legal bill from our office either. So
Okay.
Right. I would agree. I would agree. I would agree with Spencer. I would just reiterate the fact that I mean, I know he said it, but I would like to stress again, these laws, the ones that have in fact passed, go into effect April 1. So if you have employees that are already quarantining and that cannot work remotely, either they're going to be subject to current PTO policies from an HR handbook or FMLA, and you need to balance any time off that has already happened against the April 1st start of this law and when the tax credits can become applicable, and you need to balance that from a payroll perspective. The other thing I would say before we open up to questions is, what the indicators are on the new law, and again, I will emphasize that it is not passed yet, but for the lending to take place at the SBA level, if you're following what Mnuchin is saying and a lot of the press reports, they're trying to get liquidity to Main Street as quickly as possible, but you will need to be prepared with payroll reports and adequate summaries at the business level to be able to define damages or losses. So if you don't know what you need to have to prepare from a payroll summary perspective, or if you don't know how the proper payroll codes to be able to apply these tax credits to, and to make sure that you're allocating those properly, I did put my email address in the comments. Please reach out to Spencer or myself. I don't know if Spencer is going to get into those payroll codes and those type of things and the payroll reports. I'm sure he can help, but either his office or our office wants to be there to help walk you through that. So
Yeah, and
I'm
thank
speaking
you,
now
Dan.
for you, Spencer. Sorry, man.
No, you're fine. Thank you for mentioning that. So no, I don't have any, I won't be getting into any payroll codes or any of the details about payroll. And the reason is I am smart enough to know that payroll issues and things like that need to be run through people like Dan. So I don't mess with that kind of area at all. My goal is just to be an HR employment law resource. And so it's fantastic to have somebody like Dan to be a part of the call with the resources that he's got at his company. So we have a great question here I've been kind of eyeing for a few minutes here from Mike that I thought would be good to address. And I say this is a great question because it's come up a lot of times. So Mike asked, how does the employee need to verify sickness of themselves or family that they need to care for? The new law and the guidance issued from the DOL does not get any kind of requirements or mandatory rules that have to be followed about how do we verify a sickness. My recommendation is, especially with the environment that we're dealing with as a nation and frankly as a world right now, if there's an employee who says, hey, I've got symptoms of COVID-19, or my spouse or my child does, and we're sick and we don't want to come into work, take them at their word. Don't insist on getting a doctor's note. Don't insist on any kind of formal proof that they're sick. The EEOC has issued guidance that you are able to take temperatures of employees. If an employee is sick, you are able to send them home without any risk of some kind of a discrimination claim. And so I would encourage any business owner that if you've got an employee who claims that they're sick and with the virus, or they've got somebody at home who's got it, absolutely let them go and look at figuring out how can you give benefits to this person. And don't have them come in and put yourself or other employees at risk. So yeah, so the verification question, there's no guidance out there, and I don't think we need to verify anything. I think we take employees at their word.
So let me, we're just gonna run rapid through these questions real quick. I think we'll limit it to Spencer for the most part, unless Dan, you have something you wanna add. So going back up to Rachel, she had a question saying, can you give more detail about the paid sick leave regarding children?
Okay, so I don't know exactly what detail you've got in mind, but let me just share. As far as the children, the main issue with children is either that you've got an employee who's caring for a child who's sick, or you've got an employee who is not able to work because they've got a kid who's out of school. So right now, everywhere in Utah, we're out at least until May 1st, and that might be extended of course. So anyone who is out of work and they cannot work because they're taking care of kids, they would be eligible for benefits under this new law from last week.
So Mandolin.
Well, could I piggyback onto that, Spencer?
Sure.
So when we talk about out of work, right? To qualify for this, let's make sure that they're not a laid off employee, right? This is supposed to be an employee who's qualifying for one of these expanded leaves. Both of those scenarios that you outlined, either they're caring for a sick child, that would be an item 4, or item 5 would be that the school has closed, so they need to take care of that. But we need to make sure that we're not separating the employment so that we could take advantage of the payroll tax credit to have that payroll covered by the government. So just a nuance to make sure that they are not a.
I appreciate it. And certainly the benefits apply to people who are still employees of the business. That's right. And so if there's an employee who no longer works for you, regardless of the reason, when they're not an employee anymore, these benefits are not applicable. This is about people who cannot come into work or cannot work remotely because of one of these reasons we've been discussing.
Yeah, and I don't know, Josh, if on the call you want us to, give at least some of the indicators that we see on the second tier of relief, which are, okay, what about households then that have been let go, and unemployment relief as opposed to loan payments to businesses. If you want, I'm happy to talk about that, or Spencer can as well. But what we're talking about right now are current employees that are taking advantage of leave time.
So I think we probably will need to do a little follow-up once we have more clarification from this package that's coming out. What do you think, Spencer?
Yeah, there is a need for more clarification pretty much every day. And so I'm working with another employment attorney, and we're doing a free webinar Friday at noon. And then we're doing another one on Monday at 12:30. And so again, if anyone wants to be a part of that webinar, just shoot me an email and I can get you an invite to that. But just like Dan was saying as well, this is something that's changing so rapidly that whatever we're talking about today can be clarified and changed and updated tomorrow, and certainly on Monday, and all through next week and through the month of April. So yeah, it's going to be changing rapidly.
Josh, if I could just inject a thought. I mean, again, my perspective here is, for the employer themselves, I'm more than happy to participate on any other calls, but what would happen based on what we do know on the agreed upon points of the law are that the government is talking out of two corners of their mouth, right? What they're saying is, look, we want to provide relief for households that are impacted by this that have been let go. So they're saying that they're expanding unemployment insurance. They call it unemployment insurance on steroids or whatever they've referred to it as, which means that employees can have up to 100% of their wage, not a percentage of their wage, but 100% of their wage for up to 4 months. Now, if the government is going to use unemployment insurance in conjunction with the state, so the state would put in their first part and the federal government would match that wage to make sure that the employee has 100% of the wage, the government is saying, we don't care, it's the same check. Because on the other side of their mouth, they're saying, we would also provide SBA lending to the businesses in the form of loans. And if you do not reduce your workforce, we will forgive those loans, in essence, turning them into grants. So the government is saying, we don't care which side of our mouth you listen to. We want to make sure that that employee is taken care of, which means the wage is protected. Whether we write the check to the employee through the states or whether we write the check to the business and they provide payroll, we don't care. It's the same check to us. But the impact to the economy and to the recovery, the reason why they're coming out with the loans is because if the loan is given to the business, when you listen to Senator Schumer on the Senate floor, when he said, if employers let go of all these employees, and those employees are scattered to the winds, as he said on the Senate floor, and by the time we ramp up the economy and try to get a rebound, those employers will be in a predicament where they don't have the staff necessary to be able to handle a recovery. If all the restaurant employees now go find other jobs, the stimulus package has an obstacle in front of it because they don't have the staff to adequately reopen. So the government would rather have the stimulus go through the employers in the form of forgivable loans to help enact that recovery. The reason why I would say it's important to talk about some of these things now is because if you are letting go of employees now, if you are laying employees off, you may disqualify your business from being able to have that loan forgiven. And those are decisions that employers need to know now. So now granted, the bill does say you can, maybe you can rehire them and we'll let that go retroactively to February 15th. But if those employees have already moved on, those decisions, the employers need to know about this type of information right now.
So yeah, so we'll, and the more information we get and we're able to provide, we can send out emails, and I think the Small Business Development Center and the Business Resource Center can send out information as well. So Spencer, if you want to send us those links, we can disseminate that for your future calls. But we are running out of time. We've got about 10, 11 minutes left that we were planning on. So let's get through the rest of these questions. So from Mandolin, if we have reduced hours for employees because our revenue has been impacted, is there any help for the small business to receive funds to be able to give employees full hours, full pay? And I think that goes more to the SBA loan fund. We're actually going to have Val Hale on the call on Monday talking about some of the Utah stimulus packages. Do you have anything to add to that, Spencer?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a perfect follow-up call for the members of the chamber to get some more information on what loans are available and when can they be converted into grants and be forgiven and all that. So at least for focusing on the HR issues in the new COVID-19 law, probably ought to let that question go to the next presenter.
Okay. From Kelly, I own a bakery and our baker does have childcare at home, but has indicated that she doesn't want to come in and risk getting her children sick. Do we have to pay her if she does not want to come in just for the risk?
Okay, so and my perspective on this is if you've got an employee who's worried about coming into work because of health reasons, but they are not home on a government order, they are not home on a doctor's recommendation, and they're not home because they're sick or somebody in their family's sick, they simply don't want to come to work because they don't want to be out and about. This new COVID or Corona Response Act would not apply to that person because they are able to work. They are able to work remotely or in person, I should say, for this question. And if they can come into work, but they're choosing not to, none of these benefits would apply to them.
Okay, and I think that Carlos asked a similar question. Where is the line drawn when an employee has to stay home from symptoms? I think that basically you're saying if they have a doctor's order that they need to stay home or quarantine themselves, then that's kind of where the line is. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's not a really clear line. Again, I encourage businesses to just defer to what their employees are feeling most comfortable about. I understand that that can put the business in a bind if they need people to come in and the employees don't want to come in. But if they're choosing not to come in and it's not for one of these reasons we've been discussing today, then they don't have any right to any of these paid leave benefits.
Gotcha. Some questions on the shelter in place. So a lot of states are issuing those orders now. So if a shelter in place order comes in, does that mean that everyone qualifies?
Well, it would mean that the item number one, which is there's a government or a state government order that people have to stay in or shelter in. And I don't know what Utah's is going to look like if and when it happens. I know one of the comments said that they heard it maybe starting tonight. If that does happen, that will qualify as the first situation where employees then become eligible for these benefits because they're staying home under a government order.
Gotcha.
Again, I would just add to that, assuming that they cannot telecommute or telework.
Of course, thank you for pointing that. And that's going to be the same every time one of these issues come up. It really the benefits only come into play if the employee cannot work. So if they're at home, but like a lot of businesses are set up where they do have employees that have computers and internet access and they're able to do their duties from home. If that's the case, then they can work from home and there's no need to pay them any of these paid leave benefits.
Yeah, I think a lot of the service industries are going to be affected on a shelter in place. You know, you can't fix a car from home.
You can't make a hamburger from home, exactly. It's so true.
If our company currently does not provide sick leave, do we have to now give an employee sick leave or do they use PTO?
So there's no requirement that businesses need to alter any policies and start giving paid sick leave as far as like an internal employment benefit. But any business that's under 500 employees, if they have an employee who fits into one of these categories, that employee now has eligibility and a right to get paid sick leave under this new law. So a lot of businesses do offer paid sick leave. It's not something that's required in the state of Utah. If the employer does give that benefit, employees can choose to use it or they can choose to use the benefits under this new law. And so just because a business has not previously given paid sick leave to their employees as just a benefit of being an employee at the company, this new law is now essentially putting the onus on business owners to start giving paid leave to these employees who fit under these circumstances.
So Floribel has a different spin on this work from home issue. She said, if we can provide work at home for people who have to be at home to take care of kids or whatever, are they free of liability if that person opts out of working from home when it's available?
I gotta think, I'm not sure I understand this. So they're able to work from home, is the
The
business?
company is able to provide, have them work from home, but they're saying, I don't want to work from home because I'm dealing with my kids. So is that basically someone saying, okay, I'm not working for you now?
It does seem that way. And then frankly, I would say if they're choosing not to work from home, a lot of this is going to be trying to figure out what do we think it means because we don't have clear guidance on it. But if they've got kids that they're taking care of, that might put them under one of those categories. But if they've got a spouse who can take care of the kids and they're just choosing to say they don't want to work, what does that really mean? Are they then eligible for benefits? Frankly, I don't think so. I think if they're just choosing and saying, I don't want to work, but I could if I wanted to, I don't think they probably fall within the eligibility classifications for somebody who gets benefits under this new law. But that's just my opinion. Certainly there's been no time for any judge to rule on that kind of a fact situation, and we might have that in the near future. But right now, my advice and my counsel is, if they cannot work, that's when we start looking at these benefits. If they're just choosing not to work, that's a different story.
Okay, we've got a kind of a follow-up question. What about employees that can work from home but aren't able to get all of their hours due to taking care of children?
That is an excellent question. So that is not specifically addressed in the new Coronavirus Response Act. But my take on it is, if they're only able to work part of their hours, maybe they work normally 8 hours a day, but because of kids at home, they can only work 4 hours a day. My perspective is they would then be eligible for benefits for the 4 hours a day that they're not able to work because they're taking care of their kids. Now, some employees may say, I can't work my normal shift from 8 to 5, but I can work starting at 3 p.m. when my kids are, done with remote school, and I can get in my hours starting at 3 p.m. working until the evening time. And if that's the case and they're able to get in their hours, then there's no need to worry about paid benefits for that person. But if they can only work some of their hours, and the reason that they can't work some hours is for one of these qualifying reasons, my perspective would be that they then are eligible for benefits for those hours that they cannot work.
Okay. So Carlos asked a question specifically about SBA loans. Right now, there's no language that specifically says this is how a loan gets turned into a grant. They're figuring that out. And so Val Hale will be on the call on Monday. He'll be able to address that, I think, more in depth, and we'll have more information at that time. But it's a process right now. We do have a video. Our call from Monday is on our YouTube page if you want to watch and get answers about SBA loans and some of the financial tools that are currently available. And we'll continue to provide tools and have information available for those. A couple questions. If an employee has sick or vacation time, are they required to use it first? And as a follow-up, somebody said, if I'm understanding this, do we as a company have to offer sick leave? Are they obligated to offer sick leave if they don't currently?
So to answer that first question, and I don't have it over on the side, so if I start to get it wrong, you'll have to correct me.
Sure.
The law does address if somebody's got benefits that are just given privately through the business, that they can choose whether to use those benefits or not. But that the businesses cannot say you have to use all your private benefits instead of these benefits that the new law is giving.
Okay, and then do businesses now have to offer sick leave?
They do have to offer sick leave as far as for those employees who fit within any of these categories. So again, there's no need to go change internal company and policies or your employee handbook to start giving your own internal paid leave to employees. But there is a requirement to understand and follow these new paid sick leave rules and paid or emergency FMLA rules, at least through the end of the year. This law is set to expire right now, December 31st. So basically for the quarters 2, 3, and 4 of 2020, that these paid sick leave and paid FMLA leaves are going to be in place. Businesses are expected to learn them, understand them, and follow them. And these kinds of teleconferences and the guidance that will continue to come out from the DOL is what we need to be paying attention to, so we understand what our obligations are and we can give it our very best good faith efforts to understand and follow the new law.
Okay, we've got 2 questions left and then we'll wrap up. So this is more about self-employment. I own a spa and am self-employed. What do I qualify for? Also, my however you say that, statisticians are independent contractors. They're 1099. What's
Right.
available for them?
Okay, so the 1099 employees, this new law doesn't apply. I can't believe I just said that. 1099 workers, they're not employees, they're independent contractors. This new law does not apply to them. So if a large part or even all of your workforce are 1099 contractors and they are appropriately classified as such, then none of these paid benefits would apply to any of them. As far as what you might be eligible for or what any business owner might be eligible for, probably comes down to how they're classified as far as, are they a W-2 employee, are they paid on a payroll schedule and all that. And depending on how they're set up and how they are paid, they might be eligible to apply for unemployment benefits or for some of this paid leave, but essentially it's just coming out of the business's pocket with a reimbursement later from the government. So there is a potential some business owners could get benefits from this law, although the intent of it is to help take care of the employees who are no longer able to work for the business owner.
Okay, and the final question, we are deemed an essential business. If we choose to close the doors due to a stay-in-place order, are we eligible for those benefits?
So, and I'm checking out that question here. I'm not exactly sure I understand about, are we eligible for these benefits?
So if you're an essential business,
Yeah.
and you decide not to keep your doors open.
Yeah, any business that closes its doors for business reasons is then, I don't believe that their employees are entitled to benefits once they close their business. Of course, there's so many details that go into that. I think that is, especially for a business that's been deemed an essential business, there's a whole section of this new law that allows essential businesses and certain emergency providers, first responders, and those businesses to be exempt from some of these requirements. So I would say, depending on what the nature of that business is, that's probably something that needs to be looked at really carefully so that whether it's Carlos or anyone else in that situation really understands what their rights and responsibilities are.
Okay, well, that covers all the questions. Spencer, do you want to do any wrap up?
No, well, at the wrap up, I just say is I hope that business owners, that you are not feeling too overwhelmed. I hope that the information we've heard today helps you better understand what your obligations are and what they are not. And just please feel free to reach out to Josh, reach out to me, reach out to Dan with any questions, because we're here to be a resource for all of you. So thanks for participating.
And Dan, any final thoughts?
I just think as business owners, it's just so critically important to not be put your head in the sand, right, and just kind of let the economy exist around you. Inform yourself, take part on all of these calls that you can, talk to other business owners, reach out, like Spencer said, to the group, and and inform yourself. Even little bits of information make you more effectual in how you manage your business.
We do have one final question that came in just a second ago. So if we do have a shelter-in-place mandate order, if we have to close our business because of that, how do we pay our employees? Or do we have to pay our employees?
Yeah, my answer to that is if your business is closed and nobody's working, there's no obligation to pay any of the employees. The employees are only paid for hours that they're working, or they're being paid as for benefits under this new law if they are still employees. So any business that closes because of a shelter-in-place order or because there's just not enough revenue coming in, my understanding is this new law would not apply to the business beyond that point until they reopen.
So at that point, is the recommendation to file for unemployment?
I definitely recommend employees file for unemployment, including, because of this new expanded unemployment way that it's being handled in the state of Utah, employees are able to actually apply for and get benefits even when they're still actually working for the business, even if they have reduced hours, or if they're furloughed and they've got 0 hours, or if they've been laid off. The employees are still able to apply and get benefits unlike any other time, and at least in the number of years that I've been practicing, I've never seen something like this happen before. So I encourage everyone to encourage their employees if they've got reduced hours or if they're out of work, to go and apply for benefits as soon as they can.
And quickly, I'm going to share a page. So the Department of Workforce Services just launched this resource. So if you go to jobs.utah.gov, what to do if it impacts your employment. So they have all kinds of tips and information, FAQ, all of this information is available now, and they will continue to update that. We'll make this available on our website as well, but there are more and more resources that are coming out to help businesses. So just to finalize things again, we are providing these resources on our website. We will continue to email out these resources. If you're not on our email list, let us know. We're working with Peter and Camille over at the Small Business Development Center and the Business Resource Center. Christina, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I just wanted to say that while we were here, I'm currently putting a link to that Department of Workforce Services thing on our website. So that'll be on our coronavirus page. And I also added a tab where you can go in. If you go to the coronavirus tab and then let it drop down, you can go to our YouTube channel and watch all of these as we get them posted.
Okay. Thanks again, everyone, for participating today. We appreciate it. And on Monday at noon, we'll have Val Hale speaking. He is the Executive Director for the Governor's Office of Economic Development. And he's been on the Coronavirus Task Force for Economic Development. And he's been leading that side, along with Derek Miller, who's the president of the Salt Lake Chamber. Val Hale will be addressing a lot of these programs that they're going to be launching and talking about over the next several days. And so we would look forward to having you on that call as well. We will continue to do these calls every Monday and Thursday at noon. Next Thursday, we have Brandon Fugel lined up with Colliers International. He will be talking about the perspective and what developers are doing in terms of potential economic impact on development and what they're forecasting. And so thanks again, everybody, and hope you have a great weekend.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Spencer.
You bet.